I'm Zac. Today we meet in Secwepemc Territory with elected Chief Willie Sellars of Williams Lake First Nation to learn about the start of a meteoric economic journey. Willie was first elected to council at aged 24, and only a few days after recording this episode at 38, he won a second four-year term as chief by acclamation. Although we don't talk about it in this podcast, Willie writes children's books, and if he wasn't running a growing nation at such a pace, he'd probably be doing more of that. In this episode, we discuss WLFN's recent $135 million settlement in Supreme Court, and a funny story about the Prime Minister's recent visit to walk the grounds of St. Joseph's Residential School. We talk economic growth as Canada's first legal cannabis manufacturer. We talk logging, mining, and how this nation is working towards self-determination without relying on the treaty process. Be sure to see photos from the making of this podcast at The Ranger Cabin on Instagram. It's time to buckle up, Canada, and keep our fire hot with Chief Willie Sellars, tip of the spear. It's so great to have you here. I'm Zac Whyte, and this is The Ranger Cabin.
So let's go like this so I can see you a little bit too. I want to be able to see you.
Like this.
There we go. Okay, Chief Willie Sellars. What an honor, first and foremost, to finally connect with you. Had met one of your staff members named Willie, and he had a Seattle Supersonics hat on. Long story short, I wear a Brooklyn Nets hat because I'm a big Steve Nash fan.
You know, I met Steve Nash once. He looked so small on TV, and he was taller than me. Not by much, but he was taller than me, and I thought, wow, like, you know, what he would do on the court for how small he was against, you know, the best in the world is something to be proud of. I mean, he came from Canada, and he's been a shining light on his own, an advocate for Canadian basketball in general. I mean, a lot of stars have come from, you know, seeing him on the court. Andrew Wiggins just won a title. I mean, there's a prime example, right? Crazy stat. Andrew Wiggins, I think, what was he? The 8th Canadian to ever win an NBA championship. I mean, pretty surreal thinking only 8 Canadians have ever won that title.
It is, considering how much we love the game.
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of shows you how, you know, much the U.S. really has a monopoly on the game. I mean, just like us with hockey, I guess, but everyone's starting to catch up. And, you know, it takes guys like Steve Nash to be such a great advocate for the sport in Canada that we start seeing more success, and we start seeing, you know, more of our fellow Canadians get into the limelight and be at that main stage.
Steve Nash built it. He built the example that it is possible, and he showed that it's possible. And not only did he show it, he went into winning 2-time MVP, which, you know, everyone would have thought that's impossible.
Impossible. You know, what he did, he's the tip of the spear. He like blazed the trail for all of these other athletes to come along, all of these other Canadians to come along and actually give them hope. And we've done some similar things at WLFN. You know, we started out on IR1 and spread out over many different buildings on a limited budget. You know, 50 years ago when the administration started, I think the annual salary was $3,500. And, you know, that's what we got to run the administration. Former chief and administrator Rick Gilbert was the one that started it all. And, you know, getting out of that hereditary system and into the system, modern times that we live in now, and just the evolution of WLFN over the last 50 years compared to, you know, where we were to where we are and where we want to go. You know, we do a lot of things here that is solely focused on WLFN. But in our opinion, because we are such a progressive group, we have such a supportive council and this amazing staff that, you know, we are serving as the tip of the spear. We are blazing the trail. And every single First Nation community across the province and across the country is in different, you know, a different part of their healing journey. You know, what's working for us might not be working for others, and what we hold up, others may not. So, you know, as we go down this path of success, you know, other communities are taking note and they're seeing it, and all of a sudden they're, you know, hiring an economic development person. They're investing into their education. They're looking at, you know, what kind of opportunities are in the territory. In some communities, I mean, opportunities like tourism are a big one. And, you know, although that's not something that we've been focusing on, it is something that's caught our eye because of what other communities are doing. You know, we take these examples across Indian country and we form our own strategy, our own vision, and we run with it. And, you know, as one of us sees success in Indian country, I think it, you know, inspires others. They start taking note. And when they're ready, they come along and, you know, go down that path of success as well.
Mm-hmm. Such a unique part of the world here. Huge country. You've got the Fraser River, Chilcotin River, an amazing expanse of land. And the thing that really strikes me here is the sky for some reason. The sky and the light and the way you can watch it roll across the mountains and the hillsides. And like, it's like a painting. It's gorgeous. And I went out with your friend David Archie, who's also the cultural coordinator for WLFN, and he showed me some of, you know, the sacred sites, and we spent some time just sitting on the land and listening to it. And you know, it's resonates in its own way. Definitely felt that, and the energy of this place, but also like the amount of resource available here. Can you tell me about growing up in this area? Did you grow up here?
Yeah, no, I lived on the res my whole life.
Yeah,
I moved away for a couple of years, but the majority of my time has been spent here. I had really cool opportunity when I was younger. Before I started working for the band, I was a wildland firefighter with the Ministry of Forests. So I worked on one of the initial attack crews. You know, we were first on scene. We were always flying in helicopters. And I had this crazy opportunity to see every single inch of the Caribou-Chilcotin, every single inch of the territory from the air. You know, I flew over the coastal mountains. I flew into the east arm of Quesnel Lake. I flew all over the place, you know, stuff that people would pay for. I got paid to do it, you know, fight fire, gear retrieval, stuff like that. I mean, it's pretty cool to think about. But, you know, when we talk about Williams Lake, we get a bit of a bad rap, you know, in the local press from this core group of, you know, individuals that are, you know, wannabe gang members or, you know, living a bad life. But it's actually a great place to live, not only because it's affordable, but, I mean, it is gorgeous here. Mm-hmm. We have access to every biogeoclimatic zone within an hour of Williams Lake. I mean, just think about it. I mean, one day you could be checking out the sand dunes, and another day you could be in rainforest, you know. Mm-hmm. Next day you could be in the grasslands. It's pretty cool to think about, you know, what we have to offer. You know, there's lakes, gorgeous lakes all around us. The fishing is unbelievable. We have major salmon runs that come up our river. We have an airport. For all of those who don't know what Williams Lake is, we do have an airport. So, you know, it's you do have access to those major urban centers like the Lower Mainland within an hour as well. So, I mean, like, I grew up here fishing the creeks, fishing the streams, swimming in the lakes, and, you know, just taking in and motorbiking and side-by-siding. I guess it wasn't side-by-siding back then. It was dune buggying and quadding, but I've been pretty blessed in how I've been able to grow up in such great country.
So were you always employed growing up?
Always employed. I remember my first job was actually at our campsite here at WLFN, and I was weed eating all summer long. You know, from there I worked at Pioneer Log Homes. They have that famous show Timber Kings. I was a log peeler. That was probably one of the hardest jobs I ever had. You know, when we started getting into being a student, you work at, you know, the odd places in town. I worked at Chuck's before, which kind of kicked in because I was able to get cheap parts for my car. And then eventually you get into a position where you're working in the bush, resource-based economy here in Williams Lake, a lot of forestry, a lot of mining, a lot of ranching. If you're not chucking hay bales and working on a ranch, you're usually out in the bush running equipment or doing silviculture stuff. Or if you really want a job where you're going to make a ton of money, you get into mining. And yeah, I was doing some silviculture stuff. I worked up in the seismic lines while I went to school, and I came home and I got into wildland firefighting, which was honestly probably one of the coolest and best jobs I ever had in my entire life. Not only you're flying helicopters, but you're being a hero, and the work is awesome. And you're out on the land. Mm-hmm. We talk about the balance in our communities and how we're going to get healthy. There's a number of ways, and there's this crazy formula that you can concoct that's different in every single community. But, there's some key ones. There's some pillars to reconciliation that you always need to consider, which is, building a revenue stream so you could offer better programs and services. It's providing opportunities so people could provide for their families, and it's holding up the language, culture, and the ceremony. A big part of doing that is getting out in the land, disconnecting. I just disconnected on the weekend actually, and not being in service, there's a bliss that comes with it, a peace, and you really start to realize how important it is to get on the land and smell, the dug fir, smell the pine, take a walk out and start identifying the medicines that you grew up with in your territory. Of course, everybody's territory is different, but it's beautiful just the same.
Mm-hmm. You said something to me really interesting yesterday, which we were kind of talking about the idea of being Indigenous, what that means to you.
Yeah, historically being Indigenous was about, surviving and honoring the Creator and respecting the land that you live in. Honoring the animals like the fish and the deer and the moose and the medicines like the sage and the berries, and really go down a long list of how we used to survive as a people. Being Indigenous in 2022, it's about reconnecting, being a proud person. I take great pride of where I come from, and I take great pride in being a Secwepemc man at this time. In just, you say those words and there's a little bit of healing that happens, because we talk about historically what being Indigenous meant. 50 years ago, being Indigenous meant that they're stripping your culture, your language, your ceremony, your traditions. They're trying to take the Indian from the child. So now being Indigenous 2022, it's about reconciliation and this discussion around reconciliation and what it means. We always say that it's not a buzzword around here, but there is also, a responsibility on every single one of us as First Nations people. And what did our ancestors fight for? They fought for us so that we could hold on to our language. They fought for us and survive so that we can hold on to our culture and our ceremony. And we're starting to see this revitalization that's happening in every single one of our communities, more so in different communities depending on where they are in their healing journey. And being Indigenous nowadays is about holding that up and honoring it and actually, taking that responsibility of championing it. And I'd like to think that we're doing a good job, but there's still a ton of work to do. And that's on me, and that's on every single one of us in our communities to do a better job in that revitalization piece, because being Indigenous just isn't about saying that I'm from the Williams Lake First Nation and I'm Secwepemc and I'm a part of Secwepemc, but it's about taking the time, learning my language, taking the time, participating in ceremony, picking up the drum, and actually being a champion and showing to the world how proud of a people we are and how proud of a person I am.
Reconnecting and what we would call, or the fancy term, down south, is decolonizing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, it is fancy. I should start using that one.
Oh, it's a good one. I look at you and I look at what is happening up here economically, and I think you're playing the Western game so that you can reclaim non-Western ways.
There's this misconception in this country that First Nations people get everything for free, but we don't, and that is one of the great myths of every single one of our communities that we've been dealing with over the years. You get free education, you don't have to pay taxes, you get free housing. I look at, Bev Sellars. She's written a couple books. Price Paid was her last one. She actually just sent me a quote the other day, and we were talking about the recent gang activity and the shooting that happened in Williams Lake. And when we talk about, reconciliation being this education and educating yourself on whose traditional territory you're operating in, and the benefits that we're starting to see in Indian country in regards to resource benefit agreements, when we're starting to see proponents coming to the table and, striking up partnerships and building relationships, there is a price being paid. And that upsets some people, but we've paid the ultimate price as a First Nation, as a people. We've paid and we've paid and we've paid and we've paid, as she would say, because it's hard to identify as a Secwepemc person when historically a lot of that language and culture has been stripped, and for what? So that they could get access to our lands and we would be that silent people that they could sweep under the rug. Well, now we're breaking out of that, and we're starting to see success. Say we're using the system against the system. It took us a while, but, what we've seen is this massive movement that, the legal landscape, I guess the playing field is starting to level out because of what's been happening in the courts over the past 20 years. What it's done to our community in regards to, giving us, I guess, the strength and the power and pushing industry so that people have to come to the table. This misconception of we get everything for free. No, we get limited amount of funding. We have subpar housing. We have a limited amount of funding for post-secondary. A lot of First Nation communities, because they don't have own source revenue coming in, they can only fund a percentage of those that apply for post-secondary education. Here we are in a situation at WLFN because of the amount of revenue we bring in, because of the success that we've seen in business, because the partnerships that have come online that not only give us opportunity and employment, but also provide a revenue stream. We've been able to reinvest that into the community, provide better programs and services, fund law enforcement, fund a rec program, fund 100% of our post-secondary applicants, fund anybody who wants to get into trades training, line up apprenticeship opportunities with partners throughout the territory. So we're putting all of these things in place so that people don't have to move away if they don't want to. Even looking at some of the businesses that we've started up, whether it's cannabis or whether it's silviculture or whether it's logging or whether it's archaeology or security services or medic service or working for the band in social development, education, recreation, administration. We continue to create these niches of opportunity, because an individual could go get a career job at the mine, starting salary of $80K a year, and with an opportunity to get overtime. But that's not for everyone, and that same individual, they look at quality of life, and maybe quality of life is better if they get a trimming job at sugarcane cannabis, where they actually enjoy to go to work every day, or in administration at the band office, or work in social dev, or work in finance. We have tons of entry-level positions that are always coming up because we continue to grow as an organization. When we start educating the general public on what it's actually like in a First Nation community and the history of hurt and trauma, start seeing people standing beside us as opposed to trying to stand above us and tell us. And that's been one of the biggest changes that we've seen in this region. We've had to try that much harder to educate people, make them believers in what we're doing because they're not used to it. But they're quickly becoming used to it, and they're quickly becoming supporters. There's lots of room on the bandwagon, we always say.
It's an incredibly diverse portfolio. When I started looking at the businesses that you have and even just floating around yesterday and visiting all these businesses and learning that you're into full retail now with Unity and how it's in multiple cities You're expanding that. You're working every level of production for your cannabis. How do you feel about that? It's an exciting opportunity that you were on the leading edge of, and it's legal.
Yeah, I mean, that cannabis journey has been something, hasn't it? We've been getting a ton of profile with our cannabis initiatives, and it's been pretty interesting, to be honest. You know, it started with a community engagement session where we're looking at, you know, it was pre-legalization, but we knew it was coming down the pipe, and we wanted to engage with the community, see where we're at, see where the support was. The community was in full support. We developed a law. It went through multiple readings. And the interesting thing is it was 100% approval. You know, the elders in the community quickly identified and educated us that cannabis was a medicine. It was an alternative to those over-the-counter drugs that continue to, you know, hurt our people. And I thought that was pretty cool to be empowered as a leadership group to pursue this. Council signed off, and we went down and developed this law, and then started down this path of getting into the industry and developing this strategy in this industry that was quickly evolving and was quickly identified as this gold rush. You know, what we realized after the first couple of years is this industry is not a gold rush, but is a nice niche little industry that's on the cutting edge that we wanted to be a part of. And we got into retail right away, and we started negotiating an agreement with the provincial government. How the feds broke it down was the feds took charge of cultivation, and then they put the responsibility on the provinces for retail. What we did was we negotiated a specific agreement, a government-to-government agreement around cannabis. A Section 119 agreement is what it's referred to as in the legislation. But we negotiated that agreement with the provincial government, and you know, it gave us a little bit of latitude on and got us down this path of what we had envisioned. You know, farm to gate, seed to sale. When we signed the agreement at the time, it was the first government-to-government agreement around cannabis in the country. There has since been more signed. You know, again, we blazed that trail, and you know, we probably could have took the time and negotiated an even better or more robust agreement, but we understood the importance of getting into the industry because it was starting to become saturated. We have a Me Too clause in ours, but I mean, the legislation just isn't evolving quick enough to get us everything that we wanted in that agreement. You know, that was something to consider when we signed, because we got a little bit of critique from some First Nation communities that are trying to hold up the red market or the gray market or the black market or whatever you want to call it now. That sovereignty discussion is one that's still being had, not only in BC, but right across the country. I mean, that whole negotiation, you know, the signing of that agreement, you know, our vision for cultivation to complement, you know, with our retail agreement was neat. You know, every single time we step into negotiations, no matter how many times I've been in them, I always seem to learn a little bit more. You know, I get a little bit more skilled at sitting at the table, and I really do have to hold my hands up to the staff we have here at WLFN. Not only do we have a progressive council that's supportive, but I mean, we have a bunch of superstars here that make our life a lot easier as politicians and leaders in the community, that's for sure. When we need stuff done, it gets done, and you have to hold up the staff because they're the ones that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But anyways,
well, I should ask too, how does the profit of that company work? Like all of your ventures as WLFN, there's not a lot of individuals doing it. It's kind of band run.
That's right. And I mean, we have limited partnerships, and we set up royalty agreements with every single one of those corps or those businesses that flow revenue back to WLFN. And, you know, we incubate those to start as a government. We incubate the growth of those businesses. And then once they become profitable and can stand on their own, we let them go and they pay a royalty back to the band. You know, with that royalty, we're able to do cool things. You know, scholarships, bursaries, you know, contribute to the post-sec, contribute to some of the programs that I was talking about earlier, like law enforcement or education or recreation or whatever. But, you know, we're getting into a position where these businesses are becoming so successful, you know, a set royalty annually isn't necessarily fair. And they're going to start looking at, you know, a percentage of net revenue because they are very successful. And that's what we want to see. You know, as we went down this path of cannabis and we got established in the retail market, we quickly turned our heads to cultivation, that seed to sale, that farm to gate concept. We were able to lobby government We were able to get about $1 million of the Feds, province, and Northern Development Initiative Trust to build this cultivation facility, which is just over $3 million in total. So, we use some own source revenue for that, but then we also use that grant funding to subsidize and offset the costs. It was unheard of, the provincial, the federal government, and NDIT stepping up and contributing to a cannabis project. All of those legacy growers and the people that have been in the industry a long time, they're just shaking their heads saying, what the hell? How is the Williams Lake First Nation being able to navigate? I mean, a big part of it is because of our profile, but a big part of it, again, is because of the staff we had and what we're able to do. We have that main line into the provincial system. Same with the federal system. We've been able to build great relationships with the governments that are in place, which makes things a little bit easier because we are a success story here. And historically, we haven't. Investing in this region isn't something that we've seen a ton of over the years. But because of the successes that we've had, they're a little bit more willing. They're starting to believe in us as well, which is kind of cool. So we built this cultivation facility. We now have the seed to sale. We're going to be able to sell out the front. We're going to be able to sell all of that product that we grow in our own retail stores, which we have 4 of now across the province. Penticton, Merritt, Lac La Hache, and Williams Lake. Looking to open up more. With our agreement, we have the ability to open up 8 stores wherever we want in the province, as long as we have local municipal or federal approval, or First Nation approval, for building on reserve. But, just thinking about it, it's been a pretty wild journey. You get into our cutting-edge facilities, and it doesn't look like a grow show. It doesn't look like a cultivation
incredible
facility. It looks like we've really held up that craft cannabis kind of vision, similar to like a craft beer. There's a cannabis tourism experience that you're going to go through when you come to any of our facilities. And the way the team built it out, bringing in interior decorator like Rena Johnson from the Rusty Bucket, we've been able to put together something pretty special there. And as you're getting a ton of profile, as of right now, we own every phase of the process, except for packaging, which is another licensing piece that we're currently working on now. We're negotiating with the provincial government around it too. But once we own packaging, we'll own every phase. And as the legislation evolves and it becomes easier to navigate and there's more support in the cannabis industry, we're only going to be that much more successful. When I look at some of the impediments we have, it's because the industry is evolving quicker than the legislation. But it'll eventually get there, and when it does, we'll be established, and we'll just continue to fly and soar and see the success that we've seen to date.
It's amazing. And as I look around, there's other things in your portfolio. Property development. I saw like a housing development going up. The archaeology, which you mentioned. Forestry seems kind of a natural. Land management. How does it work with your elders and hereditary chiefs, I guess, I guess it's an elder system is how it's set up here?
Yeah, we're elected into our position as chief and council. Mm-hmm. Historically, the hereditary system, I think, stopped around 50 years ago here, and we transitioned into the system that we currently are in now.
Okay.
Approximate, I don't know the exact years, but, we do have an elders council that we constantly go to and bounce ideas off that we, as we continue to structure our governance, it'll be, I think, a lot more engagement with that elders group. Look at building a youth council at the same time and engaging our youth and, incorporating them into major decisions in our community. Because, we look at some of the things that are happening in all of our communities. We need to make sure that those youth are busy, those youth are engaged, and those youth are being heard, just like our elders are now. Holding them up and putting them on our shoulders and making sure, because those are the individuals that are going to be the future of our community.
And they will be the flying future of your community.
They'll be the flying future of our community. Yeah, we got a ton of stuff going on here.
It's so cool. Tell me your favorite stuff.
Oh, man. So, what really kickstarted our journey in our success story, there was a Highway 4-laning project that went through the community. They needed 49 acres of reserve land to build this 4-lane highway. It was a $55 million project. And, the timing of that project coming through was pretty ideal for us because we had a commercial residential development infrastructure project planned. We wanted to put 10 commercial lots in and 28 residential lots, fully serviced, sewer, water, street lighting, paving, and then land prep, of course. It was about a $10 million project. So that 4-laning project, the negotiations started and they went years. And, the 49 acres of reserve land that were required, I think they were valued at, 700, 800,000 or whatever. And we were saying, no, they're worth way more than that. And, we had them appraised and that's what they were appraised at. So it was a tough argument. And I said, well, you have to think about it from our perspective. We had so much land taken away from us over the years, over the decades, over the centuries, where, the little bit of land that we still have that is, ours, that we own, technically the feds own, I guess, is priceless. They said, well, give us a number. Willie, you have to give us a number. And I was in special projects at the time. I was sitting on council, and I was at that table, not as a chief, but, as somebody working in economic development. And I really got lucky. I got to mentor under some great people like Kirk Dressler and Hagenbottom. But they said, give us a number. I said, I don't know, 10 million. They're like, well, I'll never get to 10 million. This is where government really struggles because they always put a value on things. And what we keep telling them and what we're continuing to see progress on is that you need to start thinking outside the box when you're doing these big projects in these First Nation communities. It isn't just a check that you're giving the local First Nation. There's a scorecard that you need to consider moving forward. Yeah, there's a value of the interruption of services, which we got a contribution on. But we got a $2 million land envelope, which we bought a 319-acre ranch with. We run 50 cow-calf pairs up there right now. We have a very successful 4-H program. We have 7 rental properties that some members live in. I mean, additional housing is always a bonus, but, we slowly started to get to that, $10 million benchmark. $2 million in wages to band members through the life of the project. Massive success, life-changing money. We had up to, I think, 40 or 50 people working on the project at one time. Crazy. Careers were made from that project that we're still seeing people, succeed on today. I look at, the direct award of multiple projects throughout that bigger project. There was a ton of direct award opportunities for not only membership, but also some of the relationship that we've been able to build over the years, whether it's lake excavating or sugarcane archaeology or sugarcane security or Boiling Creek logging. You could really go down the list. That project really kicked us off, and we got to that $10 million number, if you could believe it. And they said, wow, now they're using that as an example when they're going and dealing with other projects in other First Nation traditional territories, which is cool to see. We blazed the trail again in another way, and that's what really kicked us off, because not only did we get that seat at the table with the province and built the relationship, but we also made a name for ourselves that we have a good negotiating group here. It started even before that when former Chief Ann signed the impact benefit agreement with Mount Poly Mines. That was an agreement that historically we didn't see any benefit from that major mine that was in the traditional territory, but we pushed hard. They stepped at the table. We signed that agreement. We just actually renewed that agreement this year. I mean, that's life-changing money for people. It's another revenue stream that pays for a lot of things that we currently do now, a lot of programs and services. But when I say one thing that sticks out, it was, the start of our economic development success, which was that Highway 4-laning project, because it really spitballed from there. I mean, now, like you said, look at some of the things that we're doing. We got a residential development project that's blowing up. We're turning our focus onto our commercial development, which will be blowing up just the same. Everybody is a believer now, and they're coming to the table and they're wanting to invest. We purchased property within the city of Williams Lake. We continue to purchase property within the city of Williams Lake, and we have aspirations of doing some really cool housing projects there, which will not only benefit WLFN, give us an opportunity to provide subsidized living to those that want to live in an urban center, but we're going to be able to fill a void in Williams Lake, which is housing, help fill that void, I guess, because there is a major demand in the region right now.
Every nation I've talked to, housing is the biggest issue. And it makes sense. You have a growing population on a tiny little reserve, and then you get a Highway 4 project going through your reserve that takes your more land. And it totally makes sense that housing is a number one concern.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about keeping them here. I mean, we provide all of these ways for them to provide for their families so that they want to stay here, because people want to move. People want to be here, but then it's about, meeting the demand so that, and identifying what's needed so that people can move home. We have so many members all over the world right now, Australia to Vancouver, and I just think, how do we bring them home? How do we get them back into the territory and contributing to this machine that we have and, a healthy community? Well, I mean, we need housing, obviously. The government doesn't fund and pay for every single house that we need. Subpar housing has been the Achilles heel in every single one of our communities because of the limited amount of funding that we've received over the decades. So, we have to up the standard. We continue to try and rely on government to help subsidize some of these builds that we're doing in community, but a lot of the time it just takes too long. I mean, what we did this past year, we built 14 doors, we renovated another 5, and then we got some rapid housing. So I look at that, that's 21 units. And, that's going to meet the need for 21 people. We filled those, snap your fingers. The list is still long. And we couldn't wait for government to fund all of those builds. So what we had to do is we had to use own source revenue to do it. And, when we use own source revenue to build housing, it's never something that's questioned because it's so needed, But, I mean, what we do need help on is subsidizing the rents for those people moving into those homes. I mean, we're just breaking even on what we charge for rent right now, and it's still too high for some individuals. We have to find a way to subsidize those rents so it could be more affordable, because the cost of living is continuing to skyrocket. Not only do we have to narrow the economic gap, but we need to narrow the social economic gap in our communities in regards to the health and wellness of our people. All of these things are complicated, and we come through as this big, bright, shining light in Indian country, and we're this massive success story. We get a ton of accolades, but we still deal with trauma in our community. If it isn't direct trauma from the residential school system, it's intergenerational trauma from that same system. We still see suicides, we still see drug overdoses, and, trying to find that perfect balance so that people can heal and those things don't happen is challenging. Housing is a big part of it too. And, providing for your family is a big part of it too. Getting out of the land and knowing your culture and who you are and where you come from is a big part of it too. But you can't force people to do these things. I mean, you can only provide the outlets. You can only provide the opportunity in people, and they're ready, they'll take it and they'll run with it. But you need to continue to encourage, and you need to, continue to hold them up. You can't judge. I have people that call me down on social media. I have individuals that tell me I'm doing a bad job, but
how?
They
that's just bananas to me.
Yeah, they have the right to their own opinion, and I love them just the same.
Of course.
When they're ready to have a chat and have dialogue, meaningful discussion, I'll be here. I'll be ready. And, that's a big part of what I think being a leader is about, is keeping an open mind and trying to understand what those individuals are going through that would make them say hurtful things, or know what those individuals are going through that will, lead them to live the life that they live. And that's one of the things that I've been taught over the years, is that, you gotta love everyone, because you don't know what they're going through.
You were super passionate, and even showing up, early in the morning. We're pretty early here. You're one of the first people in the building, and for sure you have a routine. I can tell that. You play hockey a lot. You have a family to manage, and yet you, from what I can tell, are 1,000% invested in what's happening here every minute. And I totally get it. How do you balance all of that in your leadership?
Oh man, it is about finding the balance, even for me personally. Like one of the critiques that I get is I play too much hockey. I play, and I dedicate a lot of time to playing hockey. I'm getting a little bit older now. I'm 38. I'm one of the oldest guys in the room. I play for the local senior hockey men's team in town.
Yeah.
We get crowds of anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people a game.
What?
It's unbelievable.
Are you kidding?
No, it's crazy. We play in the Central Interior Hockey League with teams like Prince Rupert, Terrace, Kitimat, Quesnel, and that's a big part of my balance. I get critiqued about playing hockey, but because of how much time I dedicate to it, I still skate even throughout the summer a couple times a week because I have to stay in shape. And
but you need that outlet.
I need the outlet, because everyone's always grabbing at you. Everyone's always got something to say or wants something or needs something. And it can be not only physically draining, but mentally draining. You're always expected to be politically correct. You're always expected to say the right things. You're always expected to be, that helping hand and in community doing all of this stuff. And, I love it. It is a passion of mine. I enjoy every single minute of all of that, but sometimes it drains a guy, and when I get out on the ice, every single stress that I have is washed away. But, a big part of the physical activity piece of that and being able to, let out all of that frustration and that anger and anything that's on your back on the ice is a big part of it. But also a big part of it for me is being in that dressing room with the boys, hanging out and playing cards at the back of the bus and listening to the stories and sharing laughter. You're
just a guy on the team.
Just a guy. One of the funniest stories that I have actually is, the boys on the bus, and on the team, they see me as Willie Sellars. It's not like Chief Willie Sellars. They're not, they're starting to learn now, but they don't see me in the office or speaking at events and see me in the negotiating room or sitting around the council table. They see me in the dressing room, horse playing and joking and laughing and being one of the boys. And I'll never forget, we had a road trip. I think it was Terrace, Prince Rupert, or Prince Rupert Kitimat. I can't remember, but we went and played in Prince Rupert, and I got a phone call from the Prime Minister's office. It was right after we announced the 93 anomalies over at the St. Joseph's Mission.
And that's when we connected for the first time.
That was when we connected for the first time. That's right. And hello, it's the Prime Minister's office. We wanted to arrange a call. Are you available tomorrow morning at blah, blah, blah?
Most people would have just hung up at that point. And, I don't want to be audited. Click.
And, I chuckled to myself and I said, yeah, I'm available, of course. And they say, okay, he's going to phone at this time. And I'm just like, wow, well, I'm on the road right now. I'm with the boys. And I was hurting, I was hurting emotionally, mentally.
Mm-hmm.
It was my start on the Saturday night. And
so just for listeners, just a bit of context, St. Joseph's residential school in Williams Lake was there were 93 bodies radared or
93 anomalies that were identified through the ground penetrating radar technology.
Mm-hmm.
St. Joseph's Mission is one that's located 6 kilometers from our IR1, our Indian Reserve number 1 at Sugarcane, approximately 15 kilometers from the city of Williams Lake. It's where every single kid from my community, every single kid from every single First Nation community in this region went. But then they also trained in kids from Secwepemc Territory. They also brought in kids from New Hulk Territory. And, it was one of the more horrific residential schools in this country, and we're really starting to see that through all the investigative works that we're doing, whether it's survivor interviews or going through the archival research and just seeing, the atrocities that happen and hearing those taped recordings from elders from, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and what they've been able to release to us. But is brutal. I'm struggling. The bus is really helping me out, but I'm like not my person. That was one of the hardest things that I ever did, was reading that statement out.
And you nailed it, by the way. I watched the whole process, and you guys have incredible communications going on here. And I felt like part of that event as it was happening, and I was, 1,000 kilometers away. And I was really rooting for you. I was really sending strength, because I can't imagine having to stand as the top of your community in that moment. That was a moment in history, and I was moved.
No,
and I appreciated your solid stance.
It's about raising awareness and continuing to educate. Continuing to advocate for truth. Enough is enough. We look at our relationship with the local municipality here, and they send us correspondence trying to educate us on the benefits of residential schools and the legacy of those schools in this country. And, that has been one of the biggest, struggles that we've had in building a relationship with the local municipality here in Williams Lake. But it kind of paints this picture of just how challenging of a region it is for First Nation, non-First Nations people. And why it's been so hard for us to establish ourselves as a economic powerhouse and success story, because they don't like progressive groups coming in and being successful, especially First Nation groups, it seems like. But they're becoming believers. We got a ton of room on the bandwagon for them, and the more that we educate them and the more that they see us soar, the more that they want to jump on the bandwagon. It's becoming very apparent, especially in the last 6 months. But anyways, we...
So you're on the bus, Trudeau calls.
Yeah, no, it was the Prime Minister's office that called, and they set up the call for, I think it was Saturday morning. Or no, maybe it was Sunday morning, or whatever it was. So I grabbed one of the rookies who really just knows me as Goalie Willie, and I say, hey, man, I need you to record this conversation I'm going to have this morning. And he goes, okay. And he comes into the room, and I sit down, and I have another phone that's recording the conversation, and then I have a phone where it's going to ring for the Prime Minister's office. And then I have the other goalie, he's a good kid, played with his dad, that's how long I've been in the league. He's recording the conversation with video. And it's just like, hello, Chief Sellars, Prime Minister's office, please hold for Prime Minister Trudeau. And I'll never forget, he looks out from behind the camera like, what the hell? Are you kidding me? Who are you? Who are you? And it's just like, Chief Sellars, Prime Minister Trudeau. And we go and have like this 20-minute conversation, right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because, the boys slowly start to realize that, like, you have all of these other responsibilities and know that I'm there because it's a part of my balance. But, they start holding me up a little bit better, like I had a cool...
It's cool that you brought him in on that.
Yeah, it was really neat. I had another buddy who's actually a band member who's also sitting on the other couch, and he's like, it's just crazy. And I tried to get a shout out for the boys too. I said, hey, we're up here and in Terrace, and we got to play tonight. And I was just wondering if you could give just a quick shout out for the boys, the Williams Lake Stampeders. It's like, no, I can't do that. It was right when all the truckers were in Ottawa. So like, the Prime Minister gets a ton of, the people critique him quite a bit, but like, imagine how hard it would be to like always be on point, always be politically correct.
You have a small taste.
You get like a small taste of that. Yeah. Everywhere he goes, his schedule is so structured and so dialed in that every minute of his day is accounted for always. I mean, that'd be a hard job. Not to mention the critique that guy gets. I know how upset I get sometimes when people call me down, and I just start to realize that, we're doing the best that we can with what we have, and you continue to move forward. I mean, it's like an onslaught that just never ends. So,
how did it feel? Was it a very human? He seems like a super personable person.
It was a great conversation, and we asked him. I asked him that day. We want you to come to Williams Lake. We want you to walk the grounds over at St. Joseph's with us. And then, it was a month or 2 months later that he showed up here in Williams Lake, and we had an opportunity to host him, and we had an opportunity to walk the grounds together. He spent the whole day here. There's always a little bit of controversy associated with that. We didn't really have a big enough venue for something like that to open it up to the general public, which was really the only unfortunate thing. It was just getting into spring, but our Powell Arbor wasn't ready. That would be the venue that we could have hosted him in a more open, I guess, way so that everyone could have participated. So we hosted him actually here at the office. My timing has always been good on these things. I turned down a Vatican trip and stayed in community, and then the time that I would have been in the Vatican, the Prime Minister comes here.
Yeah.
There's like a reason why Creator didn't, send me to the Vatican, for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet the Pope and participate in an apology that, was a very historic moment for this country. But, it was just as historic of a moment for WLFN, having the leader of this country being here and actually listening to what we have to say.
I wish the Pope would have come to your town.
Yeah.
We should hop that guy. Anyways.
Yeah.
It's the Pope, whatever.
Yeah, a big part of my decision wasn't just because of the trip and how I felt I was more needed here, but it was also about, do I believe in, that?
100%.
I didn't, and that's a big part of why I didn't go. I mean, we sent former chief and elder and, devout Christian Rick Gilbert on that trip. It made more sense that he would be the individual to go to represent our community there. And, it turned out the Prime Minister came here, and we had, as many people as we could fit into the building pretty much. Came in, we had great ceremony to start, one of my proudest moments as a leader. Seeing leaders like Nancy Sandy standing with them, Charlene Bellew from Alkali, also a former chief and the provincial liaison around residential schools for British Columbia. We had dancers like Frankie Robbins, Joan Gentles, Dancing Water Sandy really showcase and really show him that we are a proud people and that our culture isn't lost, that our language is still there and we are still holding up our ceremony. We wanted to make an impact on him so that he would remember us in a positive way. And that was some advice that I got actually from one of my holy shit phone calls following the 93 announcement from Cadmus Delorme. Unbelievable leader from Saskatchewan, from Cowessess. And he gave me some great advice and always continues to be, a shoulder that I can get advice from. Similar age, similar trajectories in regards to, what we're doing for our communities. So it was his advice to, showcase, who we are, make that impact on him. So when he thinks of Williams Lake, First Nation, he's going to be like, hell yeah. And
it was a very nation-to-nation interaction. Like, it was diplomatic. I saw Williams Lake First Nation in that moment as a nation.
Oh, heck yeah. And, I was very proud. We led with ceremony, and then I stepped back, and council stepped back, and we let him go into the next room, which is our gallery, and he spent an hour and a half, hearing stories and sharing a moment with survivors and elders. I mean, a very sincere opportunity where he approached that opportunity with sincerity, and, it was awesome. It was very impactful for the healing process of our community and really this region, because it wasn't just WLFN survivors and elders in there. I think about it, and when he first got here, I walked with him around the building, and we had him drummed in by our Little Chiefs Primary School and daycare. We had dancers there. We had cultural workers like Dave, for example, Steve Basil, and, we really welcomed him in such a powerful way. But when I was walking with him, I was telling him, please, Mr. Prime Minister, if you could just share a moment and have a moment with as many people as you can today. I mean, that was my advice to him. Here I am giving advice to the leader of the country. Please share a moment and take your time to talk to as many people as you can today. They're going to want selfies. They're going to want pictures. They're going to want to talk to you. And he did. He went overtime for us. We had him in community. We did the ceremony. We met with him privately. We did the press conference. And then we went over to the St. Joseph's Mission. We walked the site over there. We had an additional ceremony and drumming and gave more people an opportunity. And, he went overtime, over the allotted time that he had given us. And, all of his staff missed their flight. But he did that because, I think he understood, a better use of his time, and he wanted to be with the people, and how important it was, not only to us, but to this region and really to this country. So did we leave an impact on him? I'd like to hope we did. When he was in KIB last month, he asked about Chief Willie Sellars. So, I thought that was pretty encouraging. He remembered who I was. I think we did leave a positive impact. And when he thinks about coming to Williams Lake again, hopefully he'll be like, hell yeah. We just won a specific claim over the city of Williams Lake that went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. That's going to pay us a settlement of $135 million. Part of the request that we made in those negotiations is a public apology from the federal government. We'd love to see that federal government come and apologize in person. And that was one of the asks, not only that I had on the phone call conversation with him, but that our council asked him when he was here in community. Williams Lake was where we resided as Williams Lake First Nation. When the first settlers started coming in, we allowed them to settle in the local area. And then as more came, we started to be pushed out of what was historically ours. So just thinking about it back in the day, the government should have came in, set up reserves for us, within the city of Williams Lake. But they didn't. What they did was they promised that, and then they followed that promise by preempting all of the land in the local area to settlers coming in. So we were wrongfully displaced. We lived on the hillsides and in the hills and couldn't provide for our families. And, that was the start of really this trauma that we started to see that was happening across the country. Residential schools followed that, of course. And then eventually we were given reserve lands on the south end of Williams Lake. It wasn't ideal conditions at the time. There was a lot of land that needed to be cleared so that we can participate in agriculture, for example, and actually provide for our families. And it was that displacement that gave us this opportunity to pursue a specific claim over the wrongful displacement from those lands, which went through the tribunal process, which was appealed, which went to the Supreme Court of Canada, which was won by us. So now we get into a position where we have to negotiate compensation. Through the tribunal process, there's a cap of $150 million through that process, so we could only get $150 million. And we were able to negotiate $135 million. Our community ratified it a couple of weeks ago, 95% approval rate. So now really we're in this position where we're going to have $135 million flow into the community within the next probably 2 months. And what we did and what was a part of the referendum that we had a couple of weeks ago was that, we're going to lock $130 million up into a trust to be professionally managed by administrative trustee. BMO Group has stepped in. They're going to be that group. And we're going to do a small per cap to our elders and to our community, an annual per cap, forever. And we're going to live off the interest and do some amazing things for the region. Talk about housing development, a reality. New wastewater treatment facility, a reality. New rec center, community center, a reality. Really anything we want to do, we're going to be able to do over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's the most exciting times that I've ever thought about. When we ratified that agreement around the specific claim a couple of weeks ago, I cried tears of joy. I looked over at Councillor Chris Wycott and, we hugged. And he don't usually hug, so, it's a big deal when that man is showing some emotion and the amount of pride and how proud he was of being, the guy during that process is something that I won't forget as a leader. Like I said, build a statue for that guy one day.
That was such a long process. There's people that worked on that as well that aren't any longer with us.
Yeah, that was a 30-year court battle. And even before that, a lot of the elders that testified, provided affidavits in that process, have passed on. What benefit did they get? It was a big part of the discussions during our community information sessions. People wanted a big check. $135 million. That's a massive check if we were to pay it out. But then what legacy is that for future generations?
Exactly.
Is not a legacy. And that's something that we identified quick. We protect as much as we can so future chief and councils can't, spend it. And we take care of our community for generations.
Yeah. The most fortuitous thing is that you've built the infrastructure to be able to support that kind of money. So when it does come in, you were prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm overwhelmed. I'm very happy for this nation, this people. This is a win. This is a big win. It's a big win for, we were talking about Steve Nash at the beginning. This is tip of the spear management of the money. I think, you're a huge part of that leadership, and I'm inspired by you, like, tremendously. I hope the people here are able to feel that pride and move into this next generation thinking it's going to be okay if we let it be okay. And I encourage people to work through that healing and put extra time into working on themselves and participating, doing what you can to drop the shame and be as vulnerable as possible with people that you can trust and hold. And when I look at the people you keep close to you, like David Archie, who's become a brother to me in such a short amount of time, I can see his intentions as well as with the community and how he speaks to people even in the community that need help. It's always important to reflect on the privileges that we have, but the privilege that I have is that I can also do my part to help people along, find that healing, work in that healing myself. I'm so excited for this community because they have leadership.
Oh man,
for me,
it's being proud of who you are and where you come from. But some people, they give us a little bit of grief about, well, you're working too fast, you're going too fast, things are happening too quickly, and you're leaving communities behind that are part of the nation. And I don't see it that way. No. The way that I look at it is that, we're blazing that trail and we're inspiring others. And when those communities are ready, they'll come along too, just like we did. I remember a time when we used to tour around, KIB or West Bank or Vernon or Penticton or wherever it was, and we'd say, this is where we want to be one day. And now we have those communities coming to us and touring our facilities and some of the things that we have going on. And, talk about a coming around and coming full circle is just like, wow, that used to be us. It's just unbelievable thinking about it. We're like that mold, that model that people are trying to follow. And that's really what it's all about. You inspire and you empower people, and eventually they're going to come along just the same whenever they're ready. And it puts a smile on my face. It makes me proud of what we're doing. And it makes me, continue to believe in what we're doing. And, really looking forward to the future of not only WLFN, but Indian country in general, because there's this crazy shift that's happening across the country right now.
Can I ask you a little bit about treaty? I don't know how that kind of works. Is that something that is being pursued? That's a big...
Oh, man, it's a big one, yeah.
Yeah.
The 30 years ago, getting to us to be, in a position of self-government, really the only option that communities had in BC anyways was through the treaty process. We've been in the treaty process for about 30 years, close to 30 years, over 20 for sure. Eventually we're going to work towards that agreement. We're in that process with 3 other communities: Secwepemc Highland, which is Dog Creek Canoe; Hatzel, which is Soda Creek, Deep Creek; and Jeshcan, which is Canham Lake. And it's been a long process. The legal landscape has continued to change across this country. There's been some very big court cases that have made it a lot easier to get to self-government than it was 30 years ago. Because that process is changing, there's a bureaucracy in those negotiations with treaty. We've gotten a ton of traction, obviously, and there's been some massive benefits that have come out of that process, like our specific claim, as Chris would be quick to point out, because of the research component that was involved in treaty, allowed him to identify, that there was a case for that specific claim. But we continue to always try and evolve as a community, as a nation, as a government. And one of the ways that we're evolving, we just started up a rights table with the federal government to negotiate a self-government agreement. Now, we're not saying that we're giving up on the treaty process, but by doing that, we're putting the pressure on the treaty process. It's whatever is going to get us to that self-government agreement first. We want to be a self-governing First Nation. Some of the incremental steps that we've taken over the past decade have really proven that we're ready and we're willing, and we do have the capacity here to get it done. We're under First Nation land management regime, which means we're self-governing over our reserve lands. We have a financial administration law. We are taking these incremental steps and getting to the place that we're properly prepared to be self-governing. Eliminating the Indian Act from the way that we govern our community is the goal and the vision, and is where we're going to be hopefully within the next 2 to 3 years. Very fast. Some would say a little bit ambitious, but we got some brilliant minds on the case. Yeah. I look at Councillor Chris Wycott, who is also our director of self-government. He's been our treaty champion over the years. He's been a part of the process in setting up this rights table. We brought on Tim Raybould. It's Jody Wilson-Raybould's husband, also a brilliant mind, to help us get there. And some people might say it's ambitious, but we have enough capacity and we have the right people in place to get it done in that time. And I'm totally confident that we will. And I'm excited about what that will bring and allow us to do moving forward into the future. I gave opening comments at the Williams Lake Stampede. It was our first Stampede in, I think, 2 years or 3 years. And one of my comments was, reconciliation, it's not a buzzword in this territory. Strap on your seatbelts, City of Williams Lake, because we got some big things coming down the pipe in the years to come. And nothing gets me more excited about that. Not just talking about it, but, doing it. And that's something that we had to break out of the mold in this territory. We were always talking, and we continued to say what we were going to do, and everybody would just nod their heads and say, yeah. But what they quickly started to see was everything that we were talking about were getting done. And now it's like when we say things publicly, well, they get done, and they don't take them lightly anymore. And when I talk about big developments moving forward into the future, whether it's housing, community center, rec center, cultural center, those are a reality now, and I'm really looking forward to the community engagement that's going to set it up. Building the things. Just thinking about it 5 years from now, what this community is going to look like and how exciting that is. Oh, hey.
Man, thank you so much for sitting with me today, sharing this space, talking about some complex things. I'm excited for Canadians as a whole getting their heads around what's happening. It's really important to me that people take this with compassion and also do our part to be able to hold it up and move it forward, because it benefits everybody in this country. Not only Secwepemc Territory, but everywhere across the country. And every time an inspiration like this happens, I'm a bit enamored. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. I want to get behind this.
Yeah, you got to come here and be a part of it and see some of the things that we get, press clippings for. But see behind the curtains. You got to go have a sweat yesterday?
Yeah, we canceled it actually because of the lightning.
Oh, because of the lightning, yeah. But you got to go down to the sweat area, see how powerful it was?
I sat down there.
Oh.
It was raining. We just sat under the cover. People joined us from the community that had shown up to do the sweat.
Yep.
And it's so peaceful. And actually, I'm a creative. And so my mind just started going crazy. I was like, this healing center and what it could be. I want to see healing centers in every single community that are not just there on a 3-year contract. I want to see healing centers that are there permanently. Maybe that includes where you would learn culture and drumming, a bit of language, and do some healing work. And I want to see that in every community across Canada that isn't on a contractual basis or with, like impermanent staff that just kind of is in and out every few weeks. This is kind of the next level, is like finding medical staff, counselors, people that can be in the community permanently as part of the community.
Yeah. I look at, holding up that culture language, right? Holding up those ceremonies and, drum songs that we've been singing in the sweat, since I was a kid, making those into mainstream. We're finding the balance there. We sing, like an Arthur Dick prayer song, which came from Arthur Dick from Musquetum. And we're seeing a lot of people sing with us. Like how powerful is that they are learning the song because they're hearing it so much at events, at gatherings, at openings. That's Nakusa, man. That's unity. That's standing together. That's healing, not only as a First Nation, but as a community, as a region. We've always had to do it so much bigger and better to make people believers because they just didn't believe us and they didn't support us. I've been saying the whole pod is, now what we're seeing is this crazy movement in the region, which is not new to really the province, but new to our region, where non-First Nations people are standing beside us and saying, hell yeah. Yeah. We support what you guys are doing. Williams Lake First Nation, keep up the good work. How can we help? How can we support? It's like, it's like we're growing up in a twilight zone when we hear things like that because we're not used to them, but we're becoming used to them. We have events in community here, and there's hundreds of people that show up because they support what we're doing. Not just First Nations people either, non-First Nation and First Nations from other nations, which is cool, which is what it should be. People standing with people for the betterment of people. I like the sounds of that, and it's something that I can rally behind and get behind any day of the week.
Yeah, just being good people.
Agree.
Thank you.
No, man, thank you. That was really cool. Hey, first pod. Hey, yo.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Be sure to like and share this episode with your friends and colleagues. Subscribe at The Ranger Cabin on social media. I'd like to thank Chief Willie Sellars and my brother, David Archie, for their fantastic hospitality. I visited sacred sites, their favorite dip netting fishing spots, hiked, explored, met wonderful people on the res while we waited out a short lightning storm. Sugarcane Reserve is home to Phyllis Webstad, who started Orange Shirt Day on September 30th. Orange shirts have become synonymous year-round with colonial resistance and First Nations unity, inclusivity, and support across Canada. I didn't see Phyllis when I was there, but I did walk past the humble Orange Shirt Society office at Sugarcane a couple of times. It made me smile. Big hugs to you, Phyllis, if you're listening to this. If you've never visited this area of the world before, it's worth checking out if you like the outdoors. The sky is incredible. It really took me away. A unique blue that is constantly changing and painting the landscape with shadows and twinkling reflections off the water of the lake. There's still a long way to go in our collective and individual healing journeys. I'm hopeful. I hope you continue to treat yourself well. Support the people around you and strengthen your connections with the people you love. And keep your fire hot. Thanks again for listening. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm Zac Whyte, and this is The Ranger Cabin.